Hi everyone, this is Dr. Nitin Chhoda with Ignition Time and welcome to my channel. In this video, I'll go over the highlights of former Vice President Joe Biden's town hall. Remember, I did the highlights of President Trump's town hall from Florida last night, and so I'm going to focus on former Vice President Joe Biden in this video. Now, this segment, this particular highlights reel is going to be longer, simply because it was a longer town hall. So I'm going to analyze the highlights and I'm going to give you the highlights in this segment. If you don't know anything about me, please check out my video. You'll learn more about who I am, what my journey has been like, and why you should listen to me. I really appreciate you watching. If you learn something new from this video, please consider clicking the like button. Please also subscribe and enable notifications so you get instant updates from our channel going forward. Now, I will tell you there were some things that jumped out from both the town halls. The first was that President Trump's town hall was rather interesting because I believe that the interviewer, the moderator of the town hall, essentially made it almost like a debate between herself and President Trump. And for the first 20 minutes, not a single person asked a question, not a single member of the audience asked a question. So I just thought that it was unusual, for lack of a better word. And as far as former Vice President Joe Biden's town hall was concerned, we had a member of the audience jump into a question about the response to the pandemic right from the get-go. So that's what we'll be analyzing now, and we'll see former Vice President Joe Biden's entire response, because I wanted to make sure nothing was cut off. Please let me know what you think in the comment section below about former Vice President Joe Biden's town hall highlights versus President Trump's highlights. Keep in mind, one is longer than the other simply because one did extend longer than the other. But for me, it's about presenting you with the information and you can make up your own mind. For me, it's not about the red or the blue. It's about the red, white, and blue. I'm not Democrat. I'm not Republican. I'm American. But there were some big differences between the two town halls in terms of style, in terms of overall production quality, to be completely honest. And also, most importantly, in terms of the demeanor of the candidates, their positions, and the future policies that we have to consider when we go ahead and vote. That's your decision. Let's go ahead and roll the segment and see the first part of the town hall with former Vice President Joe Biden, where the former Vice President went into a lot of detail about what should have been done, what could have been done about the federal response to the pandemic. Let's watch.
Tonight, and we're going to start with Nicholas Fedden. He's from Jenkintown, Pennsylvania. That's close to here in Philadelphia.
No, well.
You're a Democrat.
I am a Democrat. Thank you, George. Mr. Vice President, every day my wife and I are in disbelief at the lack of coordinated federal action on COVID-19. We know that your administration would follow the science. My question for you is two parts. First, looking backwards to when this country first became aware of COVID-19, what would following the science have meant in terms of actual policy? And then, looking forward, what would your administration do in terms of following the science with real concrete policies that haven't been done by the current administration?
Well, first of all, going back, the fact is that the president was informed how dangerous this virus was. And all the way back in the beginning of February, I argued that we should be keeping people in China. And we had set up in our administration a pandemic office within the White House. There were 44 people on the ground. I suggested we should be seeking, and I didn't hold public office. I was a former vice president. I suggested we, in fact, ask to have access to the source of the problem. And to the best of our knowledge, Trump never pushed that. All those 44 people came home, never got replaced. In addition to that, I pointed out that I thought in February, I did a piece for USA Today saying this is a serious problem. Trump denied it. He said it wasn't. We later learned that he knew full well how serious it was when he did an interview with Bob Woodward. And at the time, he said he didn't tell anybody because he was afraid Americans would panic. Americans don't panic. He panicked. He didn't say a word to anybody. Then I wrote a piece in March about what I thought we should be doing to take hold of this, using there's an act that's passed a long time ago that allows the president to go into a business and say, stop making this and start making that. And it took a long time for him to even institute that, to get ventilators and so on. And so the point was he missed enormous opportunities and kept saying things that weren't true. It's going to go away by Easter. Don't worry about it. It's going to all, when the summer comes, it's all going to go away like a miracle. He's still saying those things.
Before you go to the future, can I follow up on looking backward just a little bit? You did have an op-ed in January where you warned to the seriousness of the pandemic, but there's no record of you calling for social distancing, limited social gatherings, mandatory masks.
Not back then.
In January, February.
No, in January, February. No, that's correct. There wasn't. That came at the end of March, and then I laid out a detailed plan relative to school openings in June and July. And I talked about, by that time, the science was becoming clearer and clearer of how this was spreading so rapidly. But the president kept denying that. If you notice, from March on, I stopped doing big meetings. I started wearing masks. So it was at a time when the science was saying, and his key people, Dr. Fauci, were saying, you should be taking these precautions. So what we should be doing now, there should be a national standard instead of leaving this up. Remember what the president said to the governors. Well, they're on their own. It's not my responsibility. The governors can do what they need to do, not my responsibility. It is the presidential responsibility to lead. And he didn't do that. He didn't talk about what needed to be done because he kept worrying, in my view, about the stock market. He worried if he talked about how bad this could be unless we took these precautionary actions, then in fact the market would go down. And his barometer of success in the economy is the market. Thirdly, what we didn't do is the president had an opportunity to open and allow schools and businesses to stay open if they got the kind of help they needed. So the Congress passed a couple $2 trillion worth of help, and what happened was most of that money, significant portion of that money, went to the very wealthiest corporations in the country, didn't get to the mom and pop stores. So you had 1 in 5, 1 in 6 minority businesses closing, many of them permanently, people being laid off. And then what happened was when the first tranche of the first round of money for unemployment, enhanced unemployment, went by, he didn't do anything. He didn't do anything. And to the best of my knowledge, and I mean this sincerely, I can't think, I've been around for a lot of presidents, and you know a lot of presidents in the crisis. I don't ever remember one never calling the House and Senate, Republicans, Democrats together.
Let's look forward a little bit. You said that you would lock down the economy only if the scientists said it was necessary.
Well, by the way, that wasn't the context here. They said, would I lock down the economy if science said so? I said I'd follow science. But I don't think there's a need to lock down.
But I want to press you on that point.
Sure.
You've been in the Oval Office for 8 years with President Obama. He would always say that only the hard to solve problems get to his desk. What is most likely to happen is the scientists will disagree. The scientists will disagree with the economists. So the question is, how are you going to decide this? Who are you going to listen to? And how can you contain the pandemic without crushing the economy?
Well, you can contain the pandemic by being rational and not crush the economy. For example, I laid out a plan how you can open businesses. You can open businesses and schools if, in fact, you provide them the guidance that they need as well as the money to be able to do it. What's happening now is we know, for example, if you can open a business and you could have a sign on the door saying safe to come in, that's why people aren't going anyway even when they're open, and say because you have social distancing, you have plastic barriers, when you go to the cashier, you have separators between the booths, you don't have large crowds, you reduce the size, the number of people you can have in the restaurant, you make sure there's testing, that's a really critical piece that he didn't do, testing and tracing, and you make sure that people are equipped going to schools. You know, the government initially said they're going to provide masks for every student and every teacher. Then they said, no. FEMA said, the president or whomever said, no, that's not a national emergency. Not a national emergency. We need more teachers in our schools to be able to open smaller pods. We need ventilation systems changed. Well, there's a lot of things we know now. And I laid them out in some detail. Now, again, when I say I laid them out, I'm not an office holder. I'm running for office. It's not like I'm still vice president or I was a United States senator pushing this. So I don't want to say I. But we did lay out exactly what needed to be done. And take a look. We make up 4% of the world's population. We have 20% of the world's deaths. We're in a situation where we have 210 plus thousand people dead. And what's he doing? Nothing. He's still not wearing masks and so on.
So I know that was rather long, but the responses from former Vice President Joe Biden are longer. That's why, it's a longer video. Now, in the second segment of the highlights reel, former Vice President Joe Biden was asked to comment on whether taxes would go up for middle income Americans, for low wage citizens. And the former vice president reiterated that taxes would only go up for individuals who made more than $400,000 a year. In other words, he wants the wealthiest individuals in America, the wealthiest corporations who are now paying less taxes after the 2017 tax cuts under President Trump. He wants them to contribute more towards the government. He also talked about other things like Made in America, and he talked about trying to get the votes in order to be able to pass his ambitious plan and how it would help the economy, how it would create almost 19 million jobs, and how it would contribute to the economy and reduce the federal deficit. Why don't we watch the segment and let me know what you think in the comment section below. Again, the link to the entire town hall with former Vice President Joe Biden will be in the description section below. Let's roll this segment and watch what former Vice President Joe Biden had to say.
We could save between now and the end of the year 100,000 lives.
And avoid lockdowns?
And avoid lockdown, yes. You don't have to lock down if you're wearing the mask.
Let's get a question on the economy. Anthony Argyrakis.
Thank you. I hope I answered your question.
From Canonsburg, Pennsylvania. It's a suburb of Pittsburgh, Republican.
I know it.
For President Trump.
Thank you, George. Thank you, Mr. Vice President. You stated that anyone making less than $400,000 will not see one single penny of their taxes raised.
That's right.
But also state that you are going to eliminate the Trump tax cuts. The Trump tax cuts reduces taxes for the majority of workers. I would argue not enough. What is your plan for either extending the tax cuts for the middle class or creating a new plan that further reduces those taxes?
I carry this card with me. When I said the Trump tax cuts, about $1.3 trillion of the $2 trillion in his tax cuts went to the top 1/10 of 1%. That's what I'm talking about eliminating, not all the tax cuts that are out there. And by the way, if you just take a look, we reduced the corporate tax rate from 35%, and Democrats and Republicans who were in office thought it should come down to 28%. He reduced it to 21%. You have 91 out of the Fortune 500 companies not paying a single solitary penny. If you raise the corporate tax just back to 28%, which is a fair tax, you'd raise $1.3 trillion by that one act. If you made sure the people making over 400 grand paid what they did in the Bush administration, 39.6%, you would raise another, it goes up to, let me get you the exact number here, about another $92 billion. So you can raise a lot of money to be able to invest in things that can make your life easier. Make you change your standard of living by making sure you have affordable health care, by making sure you're in a situation where you're able to send your kid to school. And if you have a student debt, you can deal with it. Making sure that your home, you can pay your mortgage. You got 20 million people right now.
Mr. Vice President, let me press you on that, though.
Sure.
You're going to raise the corporate tax. You're going to raise taxes on the wealthy. Is it wise to do even that when the economy is as weak as it is right now? Another 900,000 people.
That's a great question. Moody's did analysis of my detailed analysis of my tax plan and my economic plan. They said, I will in 4 years, Moody's, Wall Street, said I will create 18.6 million new jobs, good paying jobs, number one. Number two, and I'll increase, the GDP will grow by $1 trillion more than it would under Trump and 7 million more jobs than under Trump. And the reason is when you allow people to get back in the game and have a job, everything moves. Everything moves. Right now, you got the opposite. You had last year, during this pandemic, you had the wealthiest billionaires in the world, in the nation. They made another $700 billion. $700 billion. He talks about a V-shaped recovery. It's a K-shaped recovery. If you're on the top, you're going to do very well. And the other thing and if you're at the bottom, or you're in the middle or the bottom, your income is coming down. You're not getting a raise. I don't know what you do. You may get a raise. Hope you're a billionaire. But all kidding aside, but it's about growing the economy. And George, the way out, the reason why I'm so optimistic about economic recovery, more than I've ever been, is we have these 4 crises happening all at once, and one helps the other. For example, we're going to invest a great deal of that money into infrastructure. And into a green infrastructure. We're going to put 500,000 charging stations on new highways we're building and old highways we're building. We're going to own the electric market. You know as well as I do from your days, in the old days, where the president spends about $600 billion a year on government contracts. Everything from making sure they have aircraft carriers to automobile fleets for in the United States. If you and it's not violation of any international trade agreement, made in America. If you actually insist that whatever that product is, made in America, including the material that goes into the product, it's estimated we're going to create somewhere between another 4 and 6 million jobs just by doing that. But what's happening now? Under his trade policy, a lot of this is going overseas. You get a benefit from going overseas if you have much of it being made overseas. So if you send it overseas, you get a 10% tax increase on the product. If you make it in America and you bring it back, you get a 10% growth. If you bring back a company and you're going to open up an old facility, you get a 10% tax credit for all you invested. That actually works, George.
So there's not going to be any delay on the tax increases?
No, well, I got to get the votes. That's why, the one thing that I have this strange notion. We are a democracy. Some of my Republican friends and some of my Democratic friends even occasionally say, well, if you can't get the votes by executive order, you're going to do something. Things you can't do by executive order unless you're a dictator. We're a democracy. We need consensus.
Now, in the next segment of the highlights, former Vice President Joe Biden was specifically asked about court packing, the Supreme Court packing that many individuals are concerned about. And I thought that former Vice President Joe Biden's response was very interesting. He kind of left the door open on what he would want to do, and I'll let you see it for yourself. And then that leads into the next segment, where former Vice President Joe Biden talked about the importance of a bipartisan nature, the importance of negotiating with the opposite side of the aisle, the importance of working together. His exact words were, in politics, don't hold a grudge. He said, you need to listen to the other guy. You need to work with the other guy. We need to sit together and work things out. And he actually highlighted an instance of where Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell worked together and essentially wanted to name a bill after former Vice President Joe Biden's son. And I think that kind of action, considering the world that we live in, probably happened in a different world. But regardless of what you believe, regardless of, your political beliefs, I do think there's one thing we can agree on, which is that all of us need to come together. All of us need to be able to work together for the betterment of the country. And I'm sure all of our viewers and subscribers agree about that. So let's watch former Vice President Joe Biden in this important segment of the highlights reel of the town hall.
If they vote out before the election, you are open to expanding the court?
I'm open to considering what happens from that point on.
You said so many times during the campaign, all through the course of your career, it's important to level with
It is,
American
but George,
people.
if I say, no matter what answer I gave you, if I say it, that's the headline tomorrow. It won't be about what's going on now, the improper way they're proceeding.
But don't voters have a right to know where you stand?
They do have a right to know where they stand, and they'll have a right to know where I stand before they vote.
So you'll come out with a clear position before Election Day?
Yes, depending on how they handle this. But look, what you should do is you got to make sure you vote. And vote for a senator who, in fact, reflects your general view on constitutional interpretation. And vote for a president who is more in line with you. And if you oppose the position that I would not have appointed her, but if you oppose my position, vote for Trump. Vote for a Republican who shares that view. But that's your opportunity to get involved in lifetime appointments that presidents come and go. Justices stay and stay and stay.
We have a question from a Republican, Andrew Lewis. I guess a disaffected Republican. You cast a write-in vote for John Kasich in 2016. You're going to vote against President Trump this year.
And John's writing in for me, by the way.
I know that. Mr. Vice President,
I'm sorry.
Mr. Vice President, my father, Drew Lewis, served as Secretary of Transportation under President Ronald Reagan in his first term.
Oh, yeah, I'll be darned.
And some of his closest allies and friends were Democrats, including House Speaker Tip O'Neill and Senator Ted Kennedy. Sadly, today we have highly partisan and dysfunctional governance, and I believe President Trump is primarily responsible for creating this toxic environment. As president, how will you avoid the temptation to exact revenge and instead take the high road and attempt to restore bipartisanship, civility, and honor to our democracy?
As written by a fellow who won the Pulitzer Prize for a book he wrote about the presidency, he said, you know, I doubt whether Biden is really Irish. He doesn't hold a grudge. In politics, grudges don't work. They make no sense. I really mean it. I have never, and the second point I'd make is, everybody talks about, yeah, Joe, when you were a senator and a chairman of foreign relations or chairman of judiciary, you got a lot of things done. You're able to cross the aisle, but the days are changed. When you're vice president, you got a lot done, but it can't happen anymore. It can. We got to change the nature of the way we deal with one another. And it starts off by the way your father was and Tip was and others. You don't question another man or woman's motive. You can question their judgment, but not their motive. We badly need an infrastructure bill. Well, what happens? I stand up and I say, you know, we need an infrastructure bill, Senator, but I tell you what, you're in the pocket of the cement industry. But let's see what we can do. You can't get anywhere. Nothing happens. Nothing happens. I learned that lesson a long time ago. I've never, even when it's obvious on its face what the motive is, stick to the subject and listen to the other guy. Listen. What I will be doing as if I'm elected president, the first thing, and not a joke, and you can ask if they tell you your dad's old friends on the Republican side, I'm going to pick up the phone and call them and say, let's get together. We got to figure out how we're going to move forward here. Because there's so many things we really do agree on. And with Trump out of the way, the vindictiveness of a president going after Republicans who don't do exactly what he says gets taken away. There's going to be, I promise you, between 4 and 8 Republican senators are going to be willing to move on things where there's bipartisan consensus. Last example I'll give you. You know, after after Trump had been elected, named the next president, wasn't sworn in yet, I've been working on a thing called a bill relating to cancer cures. Okay? And it was called the Cancer Moonshot. And I worked with a number of Democrats and Republicans, and we had a bill that was about $9 billion that made significant increases in research and development on cancer alternatives, NIH, and particularly specific cancer initiatives. And we only had, at the time, I think it was 111 or 114, whatever it was, votes in the House. I don't hold me the exact number. And we had fewer than 40 in the Senate. But after he was elected, I got those people together as vice president, and we sat down and we worked it out. And we ended up getting it passed 396 votes in the House and 94 votes in the Senate. And at the end of the day, because it had to do with the Biden cancer moonshot I've been working on, Mitch McConnell stood up, and I was presiding officer, and moved to name the bill after my deceased son, Bo, who had just died. So there are ways to bring this together.
And in the final segment of the highlights reel, former Vice President Joe Biden was specifically asked about his participation in the final debate, which was supposed to be the third debate, but is going to end up being the second debate, which is scheduled essentially a week from today. And the former Vice President specifically said that he will abide by the commission's rule. This is the debate commission that handles these presidential debates. And he also said that he does indeed expect to be at the final debate. He made some other interesting comments about how he would abide by the rules and how he would follow the general advice of the experts. And this was the final segment of the highlights reel. Again, if you learned something new from this video, please consider commenting below. Please click like, and also please share this video with friends and family, because we took what we felt were the most important segments of the highlights reel for our viewers and subscribers. Let's roll the tape.
Just 2 quick questions. Do you expect that debate to happen? Will you demand that President Trump take a test that day and that it be negative before you debate?
Yeah, by the way, before I came up here, I took another test. I've been taking every day, the deep test, you know, the one they go in both. And because I wanted to be able, if I had not passed that test, I didn't want to come here and not, you know, expose anybody. And I just think it's just decency to be able to determine whether or not you're clear. And it's not. I'm less concerned about me, but then the people, the guys at the cameras, the people working in the Secret Service guys you drive up with, all those people. And so, yes, I believe he will do that. Look, I'm going to abide by what the commission rules call for. I was prepared to debate him remotely, which was supposed to happen, and he said he wouldn't do that. A virtual debate or town hall. He didn't want to do that. I didn't set those rules. The commission set the rules. So whatever rules they set, and I'm confident that the Cleveland Clinic is the one overseeing it. I think they're going to not let happen what happened last time. They're going to demand that it's safe.
But you expect to be there?
Oh, I expect to be there.
Thank you so much for watching, everybody. My name is Dr. Nitin Chhoda with Ignition Time. I really, really appreciate you watching our channel and giving us your time. That means a lot to us. We release videos at 2 p.m. East Coast time most days of the week. Remember, you can get your cell phone out, send a text message with the word ignition or with the word time to 70,000. That's 70000. You'll get added to SMS alerts list. You can also get added to our email list. Go to ignitiontime.com/alerts. That's ignitiontime.com/alerts, and you'll get added to our email list. Now, keep in mind that you can follow us on Instagram. Our Instagram handle is ignition_time. You get exclusive content if you follow us on Instagram. You can also follow us on Twitter. Our Twitter handle is also ignition_time. That's ignition_time. You'll get breaking news and alerts from us on Twitter. Now, keep in mind, YouTube does not always send out notifications on time. So all you have to do is simply bookmark youtube.com/ignition time. That's youtube.com/ignition time. And then you'll be able to visit our homepage, watch our videos at any point in time that you want. Thank you so much for watching. You'll get the links to all our resources in the description section below. So make sure you check them out. Also, please comment and engage with us in our community, because our community is growing very, very rapidly, and you are an important part of our community, an important part of our family. Finally, please make sure to share this video with friends and family members. That's your vote of confidence in us and all the efforts that go on behind the scenes here at Ignition Time. Thank you so much. I'm looking forward to seeing you in the next episode of Ignition Time. Take care. Bye.